Hello, family. Good evening. Hi. Hey, Michael. Hi. Thank you from wherever in the world you are for joining in. Hey, guys. This is your girl, Nicole Bozeman, your mindset transformational coach. I am founder and creator of Crystals, Diamonds, and Pearls. And I wanted to hop on tonight because I wanted to continue a conversation that I started yesterday. As you can see, I'm masked up. And I will explain this in a moment. But yesterday I began to talk about, oh my gosh, Kevin, it's so good to see you, sir. I'm still loving the skin that I am in. You really used that term and created a mindset shift in me that really has been transformative, Kevin. So thank you for sharing that, loving the skin that you're in. That really helped me shift my entire business, my thought process, and just my experiences. So to Kevin Skinner, if you ever hear me say, love the skin that you're in, that is from a dear friend of mine. His name, good comedian, funny as heck. His name is Kevin Skinner here in Pittsburgh. And I wanted to thank him personally because he happens to be on here, and I wanted to tell him thank you so much for speaking that into my life when you did. I needed it, and it has done very good for me in that mindset shift. And I want to share that and pass it on and pay it forward like you did for me. So thank you, sir. So once again, my name is Nicole Bozeman. I am your mindset transformational coach. And again, I'm a founder and creator of Crystals, Diamonds, and Pearls. And yesterday I came on, I began to talk about COVID love. And I asked you, what kind of power in your love do you have? Do you have the type of power in your love that can withstand being isolated from the ones that you love for any number of time? We are in a society right now where these masks and this isolation, and when you get sick, is really going to start becoming a reality more and more and more. And I wanted to introduce to you this thought process that when you talk about your love relationships, when you talk about relationships in general, whether it is love or intimate relationships, whether it's business, whether it's family, friends, co-workers, the relationship with you, the relationship with God, that which is greater in your life, relationships with your body, relationships with your finances and your resources, relationships with your passion and your truth. How are they going to look in this new era of COVID-19 isolation? Does your love have enough weightiness to surpass your need to feel a physical experience with someone when all you may have is an emotional encounter with that person? Yes? I talk a lot about finding balance in your emotional and mental space because it's going to be so critical in this new era of relationship building and communication that's taking place. As you all can see, I am in mask because unfortunately I am not feeling the best. And yes, I have to isolate myself, so we all know why. And during this time, it allowed me an opportunity to really begin to ask myself, what is sitting on my possibilities in my relationships? What kind of relationship do I want now? And here's the interesting thing about that question is that the audience, those of you that I'm really interested in talking to and asking this question with and really help guiding are those of us that find ourselves in a space of midlife or menopause. We find ourselves having to shift our mindset hormonally, physically in our bodies just because of our age, because we're getting older. And because that's happening transformatively, that's taking place, now it's affecting our emotions and our mental state. So much so that you can be in a space where you feel like you have created wealth or abundance in one area of your life and feel completely defeated and empty in another space in your life. So, where do you find that balance? And I wanted to share with you a piece of my journey that I discovered as I was going through my healing process that allowed me to really begin to identify a mindset pattern of behavior that was causing me to have relationship experiences at work, at home, in my personal space, in my professional space, even in my relationship with God, that was creating this limitation. And what I had to learn how to do was to grow in my grief, because these relationships, I always found myself in a space of grieving somehow. And I couldn't understand what was happening. Has anybody ever experienced anything like that? If you're not too ashamed to just kind of be honest with yourself, and the thing that when you learn how to grow in your grief, right? When you learn how to release the hindrances of your mind, those mindsets that have been holding you hostage or making you feel like I can survive this, so this becomes my norm. You would rather deal with a false peace than an uncomfortable truth. Have you ever experienced that? Have you ever been in that space where, or you know somebody who's been in that space where it just becomes easier to deal with the false peace instead of standing in a truth that makes you feel uncomfortable and acknowledging what your relationships are looking like, how you are showing up in them, and then how you can shift your thought process, your mindset, and your experiences, right? So let me share with you, I want to take a moment to share with you this story, this moment of aha that I had in my life. And I began to realize, it first started with understanding why I felt like I did not have loyalty in my relationships. I felt like whenever I get into a friendship or a relationship or with a coworker, and again, I'm not just talking about love. So when you hear me talk about relationships, stop boxing it in and making it seem like it only has to be intimate relationships with a spouse or a boyfriend or a girlfriend. I'm talking about relationships with my kids, with my coworkers, with my neighbors, with my friends, with some people on social media that I didn't even know, my relationships that I was forming that I already had, and those I was trying to create. So this is just across the board. And that's going to be the first thing that we have to do in shifting our mindsets is to redefine what the word relationship means. What it meant to us in our 20s may not be, matter of fact, it won't be the same that it means to us now that we're in our 50s and 60s. The dynamic of that word and the intensity of that word and the commitment and the feel and energy and flow when you talk about relationships at 25 than when you talk about relationships at 55 are totally different. Has anybody ever experienced that feeling of how you looked and how you encountered and how you created relationships in your earlier years is not the same that you're creating your relationships now? Have you found yourself in this space, especially during this, what I call our COVID love now, where now you have to begin to redefine your experiences and encounters? So this is what I discovered with me. See, I realized that throughout my adult life, all my relationships were temporary. And I couldn't understand why I would have these or create these connections only to have them disappear so quickly. And when I began to realize that when I was going through my healing journey, and after my um, experiencing of death as a widow, that's where it triggered this journey and this experience and my delving into, well, what type of relationships am I been having, experiencing, creating, and what do I want them to look like now? And during that time period, within the last 5 years, I really began to discover that when I was little, the little one in me went to 4 different high schools. And what I discovered during my healing process when I was learning to grow in my grief was that because I experienced 4 different high schools, I was at one high school my freshman year, I was at another high school my sophomore year, I was at I started a different high school at the beginning of my junior year. And then I switched after the first semester of my junior year to a fourth high school where I finally, graduated and got my diploma. But during that time, that pivotal time where you're developing relationships and you're creating relationships and you're trying to figure all that stuff out, I was losing relationships. And I understand now the mindset of military, they call military brats and military children who are always moving and going, and why they struggle in solidifying solid, steady, loyal relationships. Why that term, when you're talking to somebody that's a military brat who have moved a lot, and if you've ever experienced their relationships, it's almost they go into it with the expectation of it not lasting. And because their trigger is, if I create this relationship, at some point I'm going to lose it, or it's going to break away from me, because I have to relocate and go someplace else. So I would rather not establish anything deep or intense. Yes? Have you ever experienced anything like that? If you have, just let me know in the comments. And what I discovered in my own healing journey was that that's exactly what was happening. Because I was not ever able to truly establish solid relationships in my youth, it made it very difficult, I learned, that as I got older, to establish those long-lasting, loyal relationships in my adult life. How many of you have a friendship that's lasted more than 10 years? That you're actively involved and connected with, that has been longer than at least 5. If you've had a relationship that's longer than 5 years that you're actively participating in, raise your hand. Put it in the comments below. What I discovered was that my relationships, my friendships, those connections that should have been lifelong friendships, right? If I had them last 6 months, that was it. And so what it did is it allowed me to start creating this pattern, this habit of, I have a friendship, and this is the flip side to it. When I create a relationship, I become so loyal to the relationship, and I become so committed to it, that even in the pain of it, even in the separation of it, even if it becomes disconnected, I put it on myself as it was my fault, because I then didn't know how to keep that friendship going. And I found myself struggling with that. Now watch this. Here's the thing. I have had I've been married, and both my marriages lasted more than 10 years. So I know that there is loyalty in my ability to have love, right? And that commitment is there. But what wasn't there was this longevity in Not necessarily an intimate relationship, but just in a regular friendship. And see, oftentimes we get into relationships, and because we're in a space where we've missed being physically touched and having those physical interactions and encounters one with another and coming together and bonding and having a good time like we do, like we're starting to experience now, the looseness of the mask wearing and things like that. But this mask right here is a reminder that there's still a veil and a separation that can occur as you're trying to establish new connections and new relationships. And I'm specifically dealing with those of us who are in our midlife, in our 50s, 40s, 50s, 60s. I mean, heck, we've lived life. We've lived 4 decades of stories and experiences and encounters. Yes, some good, some bad. We've gone through emotional experiences and mental situations. And like I said, we'll get on these emotional, mental roller coaster rides. And we find ourselves on a constant loop. And what I discovered for me was that I would get into a relationship where I've had them where, again, I've had a marriage that lasted 10 years and we were together 15 years. And, I had another marriage that lasted 10 years. We were together 11. The marriage lasted 10 years and then I became a widow. But when that occurred, what I discovered was I didn't have any friends. Because it's at that moment of separating from my spouse in that intimate relationship that I turned around, and probably 60, 90 days after just really getting into the thought process that I'm a widow and what does that mean, that I looked around and I had no friends. I was like, how did I get to be in my 40s, stepping into my 50s, and I have no friends? And it became so eye-opening and so heartbreaking to have to deal with that reality in my truth, that it really took me on this crazy roller coaster ride. And in my mindset and in my emotions, I began to question myself as a friend, as an individual. Now, I'm sharing this with you because when you find yourself in that mindset and you hold on to that type of thought process said to me, I can never be loyal as a friend, or I will never have loyal friends. And I could never create a loyal and long-lasting relationship outside of something that's intimate, where there is this expectation of longevity. And so I had to discover, well, what will my relationships and friendships look like now when I'm in this new space of wanting to recreate, because we're all in this space where we're trying to recreate what does it look like in this new era that we're in. Because now I'm here and my need or our need to feel that intimate touch and have those intimate moments and experiences when you clink the glasses together, you can touch each other, you can look in each other's eyes, you can feel each other's feelings and their energy and their flow and all of that face to face in a one-on-one encounter. But what I'm seeing is an uptick in a situation that is causing our society to begin to go back into another shutdown. And when that happens, because it's going to happen, how will you then begin to recreate or maintain your relationships? What will your love look like then? in the next 2 to 5 years. Heck, in the next year. If 2020 didn't do anything for us, it made us ask those questions and really begin to delve into what does your love language look like now? How does it sound? How does it feel? And truth of the matter is, we're all grieving this loss of our ability to be able to love organically like we want to have the type of experiences and relationships, creating them how we want to do them without these restrictions now being in place on top of our own insecurities or issues or struggles that we have, right? I find myself today now looking at my need to create friendships, networking opportunities, both personal and professional, that come with this measure of longevity to them. And yet at the same time, I'm stepping into a phase in my life where I don't know how much time I have. And the truth of the matter is, when we get into this space, we do start thinking about death and immortality. We start thinking about, we're watching friends our age or younger passing away. This suicide with Naomi Judd really hit home for me. That beautiful woman was 76 years old. She was successful. Her daughter was successful. Her family was successful according to what we deem to be success in the entertainment industry. But clearly, somewhere in her own life, in her own thought process and mindset, in her soul, she felt like her life was not valuable. At 76. How do we begin to redefine love in a time where it's been so contaminated with our world around us, with requirements like this, with now if you hear somebody you can't tell me the first thought that doesn't come to your mind is, you got COVID? You backing up like, yes. I know I've done it. And so being in this space of isolation, and as a mindset transformational coach, I wanted to pose the question to you. How is the power of your love? Is it powerful enough to sustain being isolated again? Being able to still feel the love of another or to receive love from another without it always being physical in our touching, physical in our need to have that. Now, don't get me wrong, we all need to be touched and to be held and to feel safe in the presence of others. But there is really coming a time, in 2020 pushed us there. It catapulted us to this place where it's now becoming a mandate or a requirement that we really begin to answer and identify how we want our new love to look like, how we want to experience it. How do you not only want to give it, but the better question is, how do you want to receive it? Are you even able to do so? Being isolated like this allowed me to really redefine, even now, how I want my friendships and my business relationships to look. Being able to have an emotional trust and a mental stability to know that when I put myself out there, like I'm doing today, like I'm doing at this very moment, and you allow yourself to open up to the possibilities of having new relationships that may not necessarily require physical interaction, but you have an emotional and mental connection that creates this power unity that will allow you to really feel satisfied in your relationship and feel loved. Are you ready to experience that type of relationship? Are you ready to even want to receive that type of love? So what will your new love language look like? I asked yesterday how many, and I'll put a link to the video I did yesterday, but I asked this question: how many of you all have thought about updating your love language? We update everything else in our lives. We get updated new cars, we update our wardrobe, we update our hairstyles, we update our looks, our image, we update our electronics. We make sure everything is on point so that we can use it to the fullness of our ability, that it will give to us everything that we need. But we don't update our love language. You still depend on the same responses and reactions and feelings of love that you did in your teens and your 20s and your 30s. You want to know why we do that? Because even when that type of love, when we experience those type of relationships and even that type of love, and even if it hurt, you survived it. And you found yourself, which is why we'll often say, every time I get involved, this happens. Every time I get with this, that happens. When we start using that type of terminology and language, it's because we begin to look for evidence of that statement being true. And so it may not be what was intended, but it is what you determined it should have been. And you put that image on it, and you put that mindset there, and so you got those results. Yes, and here's the thing about it. What is that friendship going to look like? Because everybody attaches relationships to intimacy and to a physical requirement, which is why I asked the question, Bishop, is what will your relationships look like without the physical touch? Can you have an emotional and mental alignment and agreement and still feel fulfilled in your relationship, in your heart space, if you have to be isolated? If your loved one has to be isolated? What about with your grandchildren? I'm in isolation. Guess who I can't love on? My grandbabies. And so now I have to find an alternate way of showing love and receiving their love while being in this space. I can't hug them. I can't kiss them. I have to stay masked up. What do you do, and how will you now allow yourself to receive love when you are in a space like this where it can't be physical? How are you going to be able to experience the fullness of God's joy in any relationship if your mindset is the only way I can really experience that is if it's in a physical manifestation? I want to help shift your mindset so that you can begin to, again, grow in your grief. The grief of a loss of relationships, the grieving of our ability to have this oneness in now, the grieving of the fact that the way we love and the way we interact is changed. It's been transformed into a space and a way and a method that was beyond our control. We had no control over. We had no say in this transformation. We were just told this is what's going to happen, and now we have to adapt. Nobody asked us how we felt about having to be isolated, and now that if you get a cough, you can't be around the ones you love, or if somebody around you start coughing, you're sitting there in the back of your mind, you're thinking, we need to isolate. Well, what's going on? And let's just be truthful. I know I've done it. So now, how will you define relationships and love in this COVID era? This is a conversation, a dialogue that we must begin to have. Because again, 2020 has broke us. Let 2022 and 2023 and beyond recreate us. And I can show you how to let go of those old thought processes and habits and patterns of needing it to look a certain way. When you learn to release the hindrances of your mind, you're going to learn how to let go of this requirement. Take the requirements off of relationships and love and just let them organically develop. But how do we do that when we're so used to being in control, or attempting or wanting to control, or feeling like if this looks anywhere like it used to, it triggers these old habits and behaviors and thought processes and belief systems that today, for those of us who are in midlife, we are in menopause, we are becoming empty nesters, we are widows. It is redefining everything. It's redefining not only how we give love, but more importantly, family. It's really redefining how we're going to receive it. How do you want to receive love now? Are you willing to allow yourself to change your mindset on what it looks like? The mandate on how it should feel? The requirements that we put on relationships and our need to feel needed? Are you willing to lift those requirements and release the tension? Will you take the stranglehold off of it and just allow it to be? Knowing that your love, safety, and belonging are safe. Even if you don't feel safe, and most of us don't. Truth of the matter is, our society, we're not safe right now. I don't feel safe. I don't. We don't know what's going to happen next. We're asking for things to be in a time where there's so much unsettling. And so as this world is shifting and transforming, guess what, guys? So are we. So my question to you again is, do your love have enough power to have power in its love? It's okay to question. Like I said, when I discovered that because of me not being able to establish long-lasting relationships in my youth, in my high school years, it really created this inability for me to see longevity in relationships in my adult years. And when it came to friends and just friendships, people you can call upon and say, hey, let's go do this, or somebody that can be your accountability where you know good, bad, or indifferent. They're going to speak truth to you, whether you're mad at them or not. Those relationships that I've seen so many create, and you show the progression from when you were kids to when you're adults, and you're all taking pictures together. And I've never had that experience. And what I discovered was, because I didn't know that, when it came now in my adult life and I was trying to reestablish myself and my identity, who I am, I struggled in those relationships, in those areas. And it took me to learn how to really allow myself to grow in that grieving process of feeling like I could never have those type of relationships. For me to begin to identify, well, wait a minute, do I even know what they look like since I've never had them? Then what do I want? How do I want them to make me feel? What do I want to experience in those relationships? How do I want to show up? And more importantly, how am I going to receive the love from those relationships? How am I going to receive the friendships? And I don't want us to be afraid to ask ourselves those questions. Yes, the more mentally isolated we do become. And isn't that the interesting thing, which is so critical? Thank you, Bishop, for pointing that out. Because it is very, very critical. That it's the older we get, the more isolated we become. And with COVID, it's even now more isolated. So how do we now recreate our friendships, our love? How do we redefine it? I asked my viewers yesterday to do the love language test again. And I encourage you all that are joining me today, I want you to do that exam. I'm going to put the link in the comments below. Because you know what I found out? I found out the way we love in our 20s and 30s is not the same that we're doing it now. And I said it earlier, and I'm going to say it again. And so now is a good time to find out, well, how do I love? Before, I found, in my 30s, it was all about communication. Now, I took it last night, and my love language is physical. And I'm thinking to myself, well, now that's brilliant. So here we are in 2022, and we're going to go into another shutdown, and my new love language is physical. Yeah. So, welcome. So now my question became, when Nicole, then how was that going to work for you? Because guess what, boo? You're in isolation right now, and that physical need is not being met. So how am I going to be able to keep my balance emotionally and mentally, and still feel connected to myself physically, without the need or my desire to have the physical touch be the end all to my relationships? I've learned how to open up my heart in a space and in a way that has been allowing me to experience some really beautiful transformational relationships, to recreate a love and a receiving of love in a way that's been mind-blowing to me. It's learning to honor the little moments, the quality moments in any relationship, in any connection. It's willing to open myself up to the possibilities of all possibilities, so that I can truly experience the fullness of God's joy. And I really would like to share those experiences and what I've learned with you all. Now, my journey has been 5 years in the making. But I have done something, and I've taken all of that experience, the pain, the goodness, the laughter, the truth, and I've created this amazing course called Growing Your Grief. And what I want to do is I want to begin to share with you how you can begin to grow in your grief too. This 5-week course has just been an absolute joy to create because it really allows me to share how I discovered how I'm showing up in my grieving process. I said, and I identify 3 types of griefs and the way we show up in our grief. And then I began to identify, well, in this grieving process, it puts me on, or it starts me on these emotional roller coaster rides of craziness. And all of us have been riding on several roller coasters. And in this amazing course that I did, what I found myself doing, and I enjoy doing it so much, was really identifying those roller coasters. What did they look like? How did they feel? Who was on them? And whose roller coaster rides was I on? I began to identify what are the main power grids that keep these roller coasters going, that's preventing us from creating these type of relationships, for being able to identify what's been sitting on our possibilities, to learn how to activate or reactivate our vitality. I don't want to get into this space and find myself emotionally and mentally off balance and always feeling insecure and disconnected. It was becoming too much. And so many of us have been suffering because of it and not feeling safe to really find that space and really be able to say, look, this is where I'm at, and identifying where you are, being honest about it. And that's what growing in your grief will do, allow you to feel safe to be honest about where you are. What power grids are you connected to that's been keeping you going and going and going and going? Where you're not at a space where you're ready to stop these roller coaster rides of madness, to get off of them. Yes? And then it allowed me to begin to ask myself the question, well, Nicole, what do you want? Like, what do you want, girl? You're hitting 60. You're almost 60. How do you want your life to look now? What do you want in your life? You're an empty nester. You're going through menopause. Your body is internally changing and transforming. And guess what? There was nothing I can do about it. I had no say over it. I don't have a playbook to identify what to do about it. I got in it unbeknownst to me. I wasn't asked if I wanted to go through menopause. I wasn't given, 30 days notice that it was happening. It just happened. And it's now in this space where I'm like, okay, I'm emotional all over the place. I'm feeling like really weird. Why I was, and I'm grateful that I'm no longer in that space anymore, feeling that, experiencing that. But it is something that many of us are doing and going through and not even realizing it. It was discovering that things I used to like, products I used to like, I don't like them anymore. My appetite was changing. My sense of smell was changing. My eyesight was changing. I got to get the bifocals with the Invisaligns now. I have to stop fighting that need. I began to realize that my sleep pattern was changing. Has anybody experienced that? Like I find myself getting up at what many people might think is an ungodly hour. But it's like the 5 o'clock hour. My body just automatically just jumps up. I find myself thinking, I'm now them. I'm the them generation. We are the them generation, guys. When Mother's Day came, I was so sick. I was so sick. But even thinking about that moment, I asked the question. I did a video a couple of days later, and I asked the question, how did you feel coming out of Mother's Day? Do you still feel like your mama power is effective? Or your parental power, is it still effective? Does it still have the impact and the power and the authority that it used to have? How do you want to love now that your children are older and now it's the grandkids? What does that love look like? What happens if you're isolated and you can't get to them? How will you express your love for your family, for yourself? These are very, very trying times. And I wanted to share with you that it's okay to be in this space of questioning yourself. Matter of fact, it's a good space to be in. It's important that we begin to have this dialogue because our love and our relationships are going to have to be redefined. They've started to be redefined through COVID and through 2020. But what many don't realize is that was just the beginning. Now the hard work and the real work is going to get started. Are you ready to do the work? I want to share with you how you can really transform your mindset, your thought process, your point of view when it comes to relationships, when it comes to love, when it comes to business or personal, when it comes to friendships. What do they look like in your 50s and 60s? I don't want us to find ourselves like another Naomi Judd, to be 76 and feel like our life is not worth it. To have gone through 7 decades, to then turn around and say, I don't love life anymore and life doesn't love me. How do we shift that? There is a way that you can do that. And it's so important that we learn to grow in our grief. What I want you to do as you're thinking about this, as you're beginning to redefine and learning how to redefine relationships and friendships and all of that, and love. First, I want you to take that love language exam. Let's upgrade our love. Guys, when's the last time you upgraded your love language? When's the last time you upgraded your phone? Yeah, that part. Many of us are taking a 30-year-old love life, a love language, and we're trying to apply it into our 50s and 60s and 70s, and it's not working. It's time to upgrade your love language. And you can start by, one, taking that love language test and find out where you are. And listen, when you take this exam, and I'm going to put the link in the comment when I'm done with this video, but when you take that love language test, don't take it from the possibilities of where you were. When you take it from the very space and moment that you're in at that moment you're taking that exam. How you're feeling right then at that time. And you're going to be so surprised at the change. Watch. Then I want you to do another favor for me. Here's the second call of action I need for you to do for me. When you do this for me, I need you to subscribe to my email list. Why? Because I am getting ready to launch this amazing course that I've been sharing with you called Growing Your Grief. And I want my email family to be the first to have the opportunities to register, to become a part of the Facebook group, and to really have an opportunity to begin to really and truly let go of this grief and release these hindrances in our mindsets that are keeping us on these crazy emotional and mental roller coaster rides of madness. And watch this, not only is it keeping us on it, and we're present and secure on our own as the driver, we're present and secure as a passenger on other people's ones too. You know that best friend that calls you and be like, and then you find yourself on their roller coaster ride of madness, and their madness is your madness, your madness is their madness. There's some truth to that, but there's also some need to release yourself from that obligation. Are you ready to do that? I am so excited to share that information with you. So there's 2 things I need for you to do for me today. As I close this up, I want you to take that love language test and let's upgrade our love language. If you're a married couple, take it separately from your spouse. It's not just for them, it's for you. Not only to show you how you love, but to show how you are ready to receive love. And that's really going to be a huge eye opener when it comes to you creating these new relationships. I know it was for me. And it really allowed me to begin to see the loyalty and to start experiencing longevity in my friendships. And that's what I'm most excited about. That I get the opportunity to have a longevity in relationships, both personal and professional, that will transform my life. And they've been transforming my life as I've learned and allowed myself to show up in those relationships and allow the change to be, and be okay with the change. And I've truly been experiencing the fullness of God's joy because of it. And I want you all to do the same. So if you're ready to do that, I want you to take that love language test, and so that you can see how your love has changed and transformed over these years. And then I want you to make sure that you register and sign up for my email list. And I'm going to put that link in there as well, because I want you to stay connected, so that when I'm getting ready to launch this amazing course, Growing Your Grief, you're going to be the first to get it. It's only going to be 15 seats. This is going to be some deep, deep, deep work. And we're going to feel safe to go in and really do the work. And when you're done, you're going to feel so much alignment. You're going to feel so connected to yourself. You're really going to have stopped those emotional roller coaster rides of craziness and begin to identify what your love language looks like, what your relationships are going to look like in this COVID love era. Are you ready to do that? Are you ready to have that experience? I'm so anxious to share this with you. I cannot wait. So again, make sure that you register and sign up for my email list. I'll put the link in the comments. And share this video. Please share this video. It's important. Not just for you, but for those around you. For your friends, for your best friends, for your classmates, your co-workers, your neighbors, your family. It's time that we begin to redefine the power of our love, so that we can learn how to have that emotional and mental attachment without the weightiness and the mandate of a response or reaction from others. But we know that our love is pure and it's going to come back to us the same way. And this isn't no fly-by-night thing. This is something that I've experienced and I am experiencing and I'm going through myself personally. So I know it works and I know it's the truth. And I'm ready to share it with you. Are you ready for that? Listen, guys, I want to thank you so much. Keep me lifted as I continue to heal. I'm almost out this isolation, but while I'm here, it's really allowing me to share and to redefine. And so even in this moment of downtime for me, this is a good time for me. And I'm so excited to be able to bring to you some wonderful tools and resources and information that I've learned to apply in my life. And as a mindset transformational coach, I'm ready to share with you. So again, make sure that you register in my email, subscribe to my email list, and go take that love language test. It's time to upgrade your love language. Know that I love you, family. Thank you so much for sticking with me. I appreciate you all so, so, so very much. Share this video, and I will see you in the next video. You guys have a beautiful rest of your week. And pray for me as I continue to heal, and I will pray for you all. Much love. Talk to you guys later. Bye.